Okay, good morning. It's Jennifer Lonnberg, and my guest is Rhonda, and I'm so excited to have her here. I just have a few things I want to really quickly say. Oh, hi, somebody else just popped in. And so I just want to give you a really quick, kind of brief synopsis of Rhonda. I'm going to kind of tweak your bio that you sent me, just because we met at a Ladies Who Lunch. She's a phenomenal woman. I love everything that she does. It was totally crazy to me. So you came from corporate America, right? It was like a management style position. And all of a sudden her husband has a major medical crisis, and he ended up having a brain tumor, correct?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And surgery. And so all of this things going on, huge recovery and everything she went through. It's amazing how these big life changes can totally redirect the way we think about life and how we want to handle things, and how much more we want to help other women to do the same. So I'm super excited to have you here. I know now that you're a health and lifestyle coach, and you teach on a whole wide variety of things. And I'm super excited to just have you here today to teach us what you can. I just saw that Denise came in. If you're okay with being recorded, if not, you can turn off your video. Please know that this will go to YouTube later. So I just want you guys to all be aware of that. And usually everybody that I have on is okay, but there's a couple new faces, so I just want to let everybody know. That being said, Rhonda, I can't wait to hear what you have to say with us today. And also, you guys can use the chat. Sorry, I'll throw that.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Jennifer, for having me on this morning. I certainly appreciate it. I enjoy getting the word out and teaching others about what they can do to kind of protect and prevent as much as they can surrounding a healthcare crisis. And I did put in the chat my website, because in a moment here, I'm going to have you go out there and then download my checklist, because during the whole process of what had happened, I put together a really comprehensive checklist of everything that I literally feel everyone should be thinking of and or taking action on. So I want to start this morning with the fact that we probably all have received a phone call at some point in our life that was life-changing. And maybe it was that you got your dream job. Maybe you got accepted to your college of choice. Or maybe you have even experienced a call when someone is sick. And that's what happened to me. Is I got a call when my husband was extremely sick. He had been diagnosed with a brain tumor and had surgery for that, and came home and everything was going great. And then we had a crisis happen, and we were back in the emergency room, and we were back in the neuro ICU at the University of Colorado Hospital. And I happened to be, it was one of those spring days where there was a massive blizzard going on, and you couldn't even see the building next door because the snow was falling so fast. And me and a couple of other ladies in the neuro ICU waiting room, we were just kind of chatting. We were there taking care of our loved ones. And then my cell phone rang. And my cell phone rang because the doctor was calling for my consent to have to consent for my husband to have an emergency surgery, a second emergency brain surgery. And I happened to say to him, I'm right down the hall, I'll be there in a moment. And you wouldn't believe what I did. I literally left my purse, left everything, and I ran down the hallway. And I ran by my husband's room and noticed there were 7 neurosurgeons and nurses standing around his bed. And the doctor who I had just spoken to on the phone was outside because he was there to kind of intercept me and get my consent. And so you can imagine I had tears streaming down my face. I was trying to be very clear and very focused during this time because this was a very serious moment. And so the doctor was talking to me and I said, okay, well, if I wasn't here, what would happen? And he goes, your husband's going to be in surgery in 20 minutes, no matter if you're here or not. It's that serious. So we talked a little bit, through all my tears streaming down my face. I literally signed a consent form and they whisked him off to surgery. And I walked slowly, calmly back to the waiting room, and the two ladies who had been there before were there to kind of embrace me with hugs and telling me it's okay. And as you can tell, I sometimes get emotional.
Yeah. And you still do. It's amazing how these events, like, they do take you back. And when you start to remember them, the emotion does come back.
It does. And it's okay, because it's how I learned what I needed to do to take care of my husband and for our future. So what had happened is my husband was contracting bacterial meningitis and ventriculitis, and his intracranial pressure, that's the pressure that we have in our heads, and you and me and everybody on the street walks around with a pressure of about 4, 5, or 6. They wanted his below 20, and he was fluctuating around that. He hit 55. And so that's why he was going for emergency surgery. So they whisked him off, and it was 3 hours of just waiting to hear what was going on. So with all that stress and tension and major decision making that went on, the good news is my husband is literally a walking miracle to this day. He was on 22 medications at one point, and we have him down to 0. And we were very succinct in how to do that. And obviously not wanting to live on pharmaceuticals and having the background and the knowledge I have, we were able to do that together. He was a willing participant, as I would say. He certainly didn't want to be taking 22 medications either. So it's actually no accident, for those of you who have joined us today, that you're here, because it's important information that I've compiled and just want to share with you so that you can be prepared and you can plan for something that may happen in your future. And as you can, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Somebody just fell off. Rhonda, could you adjust your video just a little bit? You're kind of losing, there you go. You were kind of losing the bottom part of your face. So there you go.
Sure. So then, as you can imagine, with the old adage is, once you've taken care of the loved one, your health falls apart. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I ended up getting diagnosed with PTSD. And that was about a year ago this time, when I was realizing something just wasn't right with myself. And I happened to be in for a well woman exam and talking to the doctor, and she goes, "I think you have PTSD." And so, of course, I was kind of surprised. It's like PTSD, but then when you really think about it, everything I had seen, experienced, the stress that I had gone through, it made perfect sense. So in combination with that, you can imagine, since my husband recovered, or is still recovering, the six weeks of recovery that was planned for his initial surgery became all of 2016, and they told us plan for 3 to 5 years of recovery. So my why no longer was one day I'm going to do XYZ. It became a new day of purpose and a new calling for me in my business. And my lifelong history with Shackley obviously played a part with that. It was a blessing, because we were able to get his health to the optimal state before, when he was in a coma. Obviously, there was no way to work with the nurses and the doctors at that time in that respect. And then I also I'm a second generation Shackley business owner. So Shackley in my life, and I'm going to turn 50 here in a couple of days, Shackley has really played an important part of my life. It was integral in managing his health, and then obviously managing my health during the process and after. So what I want to do is encourage everyone to go to my website, which is there in the chat, which is thewealthypeople.com. Right on the homepage is a checklist. You can sign up for the checklist, and you will get emailed immediately a checklist, because this checklist is a comprehensive checklist of everything you need to be thinking about, and maybe you have already done or haven't done, in regards to preventing and protecting your health and your finances and your legal situation in our healthcare world and system today. So if you get a chance to do that now, please do so. Then you can take notes right on it, or feel free just to take notes and then download it later. So,
and for everybody on the replay, we will have this information up so that you can access the checklist that she's talking about.
Yes. So it really came down to the fact that I consider my husband and I smart and intelligent people. We thought we had all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted, and we didn't. And that's on the checklist, which I'll go through with you. And then I also believe, whether it's by choice, by emergency, or by accident, at some point you're going to find yourself in the healthcare system, either advocating for yourself or for a loved one. And so it's really important to kind of at least be aware of what you might encounter in our healthcare system. And this checklist is really designed for that 30,000 foot view. Everybody's situation is different, but it does give you that 30,000 foot view so that you can start taking care of these aspects of your life and your health. So the first concept is financial. What's your financial situation look like? So this is super simple to think about, but people oftentimes don't even double check it. It's making sure you, if you have a spouse or a significant other, that you're on each other's bank accounts as being able to access those bank accounts. Or if you're a single person, you have somebody in your life whom you can trust to access your bank accounts and even your investment accounts. Because as you can imagine, brain surgery, a second emergency brain surgery, coma, and then he went to 2 rehabs, a subacute and acute rehab. We were looking at over $5 million in expenses for his care. We were extremely lucky because he's a veteran, he's retired Air Force, and the VA had essentially outsourced him to a ENT doctor and a neurosurgeon outside of the VA. And that was a God wink. I truly believe it, because first thing is the VA they don't do neurosurgery. And so they had to send him outside. And Steve had time to get a couple of opinions. The first surgeon and ENT he spoke to, he honestly didn't like. He did not have a good feeling. And he was diagnosed on November 10th. His first surgery was March 10th. So we had 4 months to prepare. And I totally realized that that's a unique situation. Again, that's another God wink situation where we had time to make some decisions and make some changes in our lives to get ready for this major event that was going to happen. The VA has essentially taken care of all of those bills. We were extremely lucky in that we only ended up with about $200 in expenses out of pocket.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And people always question, and just so you have an understanding, it's $85,000 a day in neuro ICU just to have a body and a bed. So expenses rack up really quickly. But coming back to the concept of your financial situation, make sure, double check that you're on each other's accounts, and that you have access and you have the ability to make decisions on those accounts. We had everything set up except for one account that Steve has at a different bank. He had my name on the account, but I did not have the ability to make a decision regarding it. So that's your financial situation as much as possible. Those are simple things that you can do. The second concept is legal options. Know what you're getting into. I'm going to ask a question. Do you have a will? How about you, Jennifer? Do you have a will?
I do, but we need to update it.
So, yeah, and I'm going to put this idea out there. A will is only good upon death. And so you need to have a will, absolutely, to take care of the estate upon death, and then a power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. And the reason these two are important, and these are the one area where we didn't really have our T's crossed and our I's dotted. Because my husband was in the University of Colorado hospital system, he had given me the permission to make decisions for him there. And that was great because even with his emergency surgery, he was in that system. But when he had to move to rehabs, I didn't have the ability at the time I made the decision, but I really needed a power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. So the power of attorney gives you the ability to do business on their behalf. So my husband has a student loan from his graduate degree. I wanted to call and find out what's the status so that I would keep making a payment and keep that account current and up to date. They wouldn't talk to me because I wasn't on the account and I didn't have
Yeah. I've had that happen. Just a credit card on there, and I tried to call to see about, I can't even remember what it was, and they're like, well, we can't tell you. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't tell us? And our insurance, our health insurance, the same thing, because it's under his work. So he had to call them to tell them it was okay. But what my mind is really rolling about right now is my children. Do you know, is this because our daughter just turned 18?
So I'll get there in just a second.
Okay, good. I'm like, my mind's already rolling, so I'm waiting to find out.
Yeah, that's good that you're thinking about that, because so there's the power of attorney for the business side of things, the medical power of attorney, which allows you to make medical decisions. So that's important, especially since your daughter just turned 18. No matter if she lives in your home or not, if she ends up in an accident and in the emergency room, you can't make decisions for her.
Right. Well, and this is really close to home for me. I know we haven't spoken in a while, but she was in neuro about a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
And not similar, but still being in neuro and things like that. And it's so traumatic. And I'm like, what would have happened if it would have happened when she turned 18? Right. So yeah, my mind's really there right now. So I can't wait to hear what else you have for us.
So I always recommend to those friends and people in my sphere of influence, it's like, if you have a child who is 18 living with you and or going to school out of state, you need to have a power of attorney and a medical power of attorney on them, so that if something should happen and they're unable to make decisions on their own behalf, you can step in. Because we've probably all heard the word HIPAA.
Mm-hmm. Well, my son is the same thing. He's 21, but he rides, and he broke his hand right in the rodeo, and thank God it was just his hand. But I'm like, you've really got me thinking today about things that I need to get set up.
Yeah. And it's really inexpensive considering what you're able to do on the other end. It's really inexpensive to get a power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. And if you're so inclined and you've had those discussions with your loved one, advance directives. Do they want to have any and all means available?
I feel a family meeting coming on at my house.
Yes. Exactly. So here's what happened to us. It's kind of funny because everybody thinks of guardian and conservatorship is what you have on a minor child. I actually went to the Douglas County Court and got guardianship and conservatorship on my husband.
Okay.
I had to stand in front of a judge, and ironically, he said to me, you realize the magnitude of responsibility that you're taking on? And I'm like, I already have it. I just need to have the legal paperwork to let me make decisions. So once my husband was out of the hospital and in rehab and recovering, and we were having to do all the financial paperwork to provide to the courts, because I had to prove that I wasn't stealing our money, even though, because I was a guardian and a conservator for him, even though it was our accounts and all of that. So I had to prove to the courts that I wasn't just stealing money. And so once we were able to get the power of attorney and the medical power of attorney in place, then I revoked that guardianship and conservatorship. So those are, the legal options that people need to be thinking about and really paying attention to, because it's not really if, it's going to be a when, and it might not be you, it might be somebody else in your sphere of influence or a loved one. The third concept is what I call sick insurance. It's the health insurance that we're all accustomed to talking about. That's, you said, is available through your husband's work. It's very important to have. And I call it reactive insurance, because it's really, you get sick, you react, you go get something done, taken care of, and then it's supposed to restore your health. Well, it can and it can't necessarily. Like for my husband, he's on a 3 to 5 year recovery. So what we've been able to do on our own in conjunction with his health insurance, that's really what's been able to quicken his recovery, is how I would say that. So health insurance, as we know it today, is really sick insurance. You get sick, you get help for it. And especially if you're self-employed, I know it's a daunting expense in some cases, in some families, but it really is important, because as I've previously mentioned, you can rack up millions of dollars in our healthcare system in like a heartbeat. I mean, in essentially 3 months, we racked up over $5 million. So, and like I mentioned earlier, we were lucky in the sense he was diagnosed in November and his surgery was in March. So we had some time to evaluate his insurance situation. So he completely changed his insurance at work. And he literally said to me, in case something goes wrong, you have this as a backup. And it's like, well, I needed it as a backup, because when he needed to be transported from one emergency room department at one hospital to another, that was a $3,500 ambulance ride. And they couldn't get a hold of the VA to approve that. I pulled out his insurance card and I said, use this. We've got to get him over there as quickly as possible. And we had to use it again when he left the hospital and went to the first rehab. So he had to go to subacute rehab to literally start relearning how to walk again and swallow. His surgery had taken his facial nerve, so he looked like he had a stroke, but it also affected his ability to swallow and to eat. So, and when you're laying in bed in a coma for 30 days, your muscles atrophy and you have to relearn how to walk. So he went to subacute rehab, and then I had to use that insurance again to move him to acute rehab, where they continued working with him on occupational and physical therapy and speech therapy. So that was key in that his health insurance, I was able to use it for that. When he finally came home, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're probably so excited, he's home." Yes, I was glad he was home, but that's when the work really fell on my shoulders. So we had to use that insurance again to get physical therapists, occupational therapists, and speech therapists into the home to continue working with him. And that was key in the respect that had he just sat at home and not done the therapy, I don't think his recovery would have happened as quickly. And I had the sense of knowing that there were other people who had more expertise than myself, of being able to identify if something might go wrong or might be going wrong. And so I had these people, these therapists coming in the home who were able to give me another opinion about how he was doing and give me some feedback on that. So we were able to have that, I call it private insurance, outside of the VA to take care of all of those extraneous expenses that would have been out of pocket otherwise. And then the fourth concept is really real health insurance. It's where you take a proactive approach with your health. And no matter what you're doing in your diet, everybody has deficiencies. And so you want to fill the gaps. and basically so that you have a whole health kind of concept, so that you have better overall health every day. In the event you have something serious that comes down, stress, you know, you need to give your body all the ammunition it can possibly need to handle the stress load of something like that. You would know, your daughter was in neuro as well, you know. It's, and I always say, everybody thinks of health as the neck down, and I'm like, no, the head is what runs everything. You know, the brain and everything. And it's like, those people are amazing in what they do and their specialties. At one point, my husband had 14 neurosurgeons working on his case. He had a 2% chance of surviving. And I mean, that was a daunting conversation to have with the head of the department and his assistant and his right-hand man. But I really encourage people to consider what you can do now to protect your health and be proactive. And I have no judgment in that respect, because people are where they are. It's just realize where you are and realize some things that you could be doing. You know, tiny steps, big steps, whatever needs to happen to help fill those gaps so your health is more whole than it previously had been. And so then the fifth concept is a new health habit. So a new health habit is, for some people, it's getting to a better weight. I'm not necessarily talking about, you know, losing hundreds of pounds or anything like that, but sometimes 10 and 20 pounds can make all the difference in the world for your health. Moving, get up and move, you know, instead of sitting on the couch, go for a walk around the block, whatever, moving. You can do CrossFit if you want. You can do the extreme exercises if you want. I personally am not that kind of person, but I like to have movement in my life. And then the other key thing is to know your baseline numbers. Know your numbers. Because you really need to know if you're outside of your normal. And everybody has a different normal for blood pressure, for pulse, for cholesterol, for like vitamin D levels. Everybody has their own normal, and you need to know what those are, so that in the event that they are out of the norm, you know they're really out of the norm. And we're lucky here in the Denver area with the 9 health fair. You can go for $40, $50 and get your numbers. You can go every year and get your numbers so that you know, yeah, I'm still in the same range. My blood pressure is good. You know.
Yeah. One thing I will say with that, I think a lot of people don't understand. If you get those from the 9 Health Fair, they will actually give you the reports. You can take those to your doctor and they become part of your medical record.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's definitely a good thing to do.
And they've even started doing what's called a 25-hydroxy test, which is a vitamin D test. So you know what your vitamin D level is. So many people think they spend enough time outside that their vitamin D level is high, and it's not, especially in this part of the country, the world that we live in. And it's one of the simplest, easiest things you can do to take care of your health. And just knowing what those baseline numbers are just very important. And so that you know if you're outside of the norm. So those are the 5 concepts. So you have your financial situation, you have your legal options, you have your health insurance, aka sick insurance, you have your real health insurance, which is your proactive way of filling in the gaps in your health, and you have a new health habit that you create. So it's really up to each individual what their new health habit is. And so one of the things that I always say is that we sometimes are ostriches and we like to stick our heads in the sand, and we're like, that'll never happen to me, or we're totally prepared, we're ready for, you know, the worst to hit us. And like I had previously mentioned, you know, we thought we were too, and we weren't. And so I have a little sheet here. I'm going to put it up here. I don't know if you can see it. I'll walk you.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah, you can see it good.
So those of you who are taking notes, writing notes, it basically says, indicate in which area you are not prepared at all. or a 0, or where you are fully prepared and you've accomplished it, a 5. And so you have the area of financial health. Where are you on the range of 0 to 5? Not prepared at all to fully, I can check that off the list. How about your physical health? 0 to 5. Your mental health. This goes back to that
huge.
thought.
Yeah.
You got to take care of your brain. So many people are worried about aging. Your brain manages everything in the body, so you got to do that. How are you with your mental health? How about spiritual health? This became super important. I reached out to so many communities and gave them updates on my husband when he was in, and the prayer support and the spiritual support and just the loving energy and everything. It was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Because people will reach out and support you, especially if they know you're in dire straits. And we were. And then the last one is relationship health. Where are you in your relationships? Is it where you're 0, where you haven't really had any conversations or taken care of some things at all, or you're fully prepared and you've accomplished or you have relationship health that is complete in your mind? So these 5 areas are essential, and I can also email those to anybody who might want that, just to review again, because it doesn't hurt to actually have a spouse or significant other or a best friend do it. When I was speaking at one group, there was a lady there who was single, living by herself, and she's like, oh my gosh, these are very important things to consider. I don't know who to choose in my life. And I'm like, somebody you trust and somebody who knows you. Maybe you've already had these conversations, but you haven't put it on paper and stuff. So there just really comes a time where you have to take a moment, stop, think, and consider where you are in these areas of your life and what I call your overall health, and then start working on them. So then that's where I can help out. Is everybody's situation is completely different, and I can help mentor and coach you through. There's definitely an area I can guarantee you where you have a 0. There may be a couple of areas where you have a 0. There may be a couple of areas where you have a 5. That's awesome. But you need to start thinking about those areas where you have a 0 and start taking action and moving to, just fill that gap so that you have everything handled and taken care of. So if anyone is interested in that and having a conversation, I would be happy to have like what I call a stress breakthrough kind of get acquainted call that is really where we zero in and narrow down to what really your issues are and what might be your next steps. And so I'm open to offering that service to anyone who would be interested in that. And what I can do is I will put my email address in the chat here, so that if you're interested, because I realize it is a completely personal thing. And it's not like maybe you're really wanting to talk with me, but we're in a group setting.
We're in a group, right?
And
and that's the thing. So here's the thing: is you had said you were going to offer some juicy offers, and I didn't want to interrupt, but a free call is a really juicy offer. Like I love that. So, and I would say again, everything that's on this will be emailed out, so you'll don't feel like you're missing anything. And if you're on the replay, don't worry, it's still available to you, and we'll make sure that you get the email and the website and all of that good stuff. And I always encourage everybody to really look at these things and take care of it. My mind is totally like spinning right now. Like,
yep.
Seems like, oh, there's so many things I need to think about, and I'm like, I know my mom's single, my dad and my stepmom are together, but like, I'm like, well, what about them too? You know what I mean? Like, especially right now, because my grandma's in the hospital, and I'm like, I wonder how this is going to work and what's going to be, done there. I think the power of attorney is taken care of there, but all of these things are I think really, really important and really valuable. And I tend to play around more in the spiritual spectrum.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but we still have to be, we still are human. We still have to live this human life. And so it's really important to take care of these things. So I love everything that you're offering today. And we will get all this information out to anybody. So are you at a place where we can open this up for questions?
Absolutely. Yes. Because I know there's probably somebody dying to ask a question.
Okay. So everybody that's on the call, remember this is being recorded. So if you don't want to have your face on the YouTube replay, that's fine. Just message us in the chat and I can read the questions. Or if you want, you can unmute and just ask the questions, but we'll just open it up right now and have some open questions. It'll take a minute because everybody's muted. So if you can unmute yourself, if you need to talk, and if you don't know how, on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, if you're on the app or on the internet with Zoom, you can unmute yourself.
And they might not have a question right now because this is not a lighthearted subject.
No, it's cute, but it's so important, and I love that we're starting off the year with it. I really, really do. Because
I do too.
Really
so
important.
when you reached out and you were looking for guest speakers, I'm like, this is perfect, because sometimes it does take people a year to kind of work through the checklist. And
well, and it's big things, because it's like, do you do it yourself or do you need an attorney? I guess that would be one of my questions. I know, like, financially on the bank accounts and stuff, you can go in.
Exactly.
Denise says no questions, just would love to have the worksheet. So want to say I love the worksheet. So she's already gotten it. And we'll make sure that everybody has the website to sign up to get that worksheet. I'm going to go and register and get it myself.
And you can also share it with your loved ones.
With my group? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a gal in one of my audiences say she shared it with all of her in-laws and all of her.
I'm telling you, I feel a family meeting coming on, like, because of my brain right now. I was like, oh my God, we need to make sure all this is covered. So,
and there will be a family meeting, and then there will be questions that arise out of that family meeting. And so there needs to be an open type of atmosphere where everybody feels comfortable that they can kind of come back to the table and say,
my kids are going to be like, oh God, now what? Last time you called a family meeting, you sold the house. Cindy, I know Cindy said she does have a question. So Cindy, what's your question, hon?
Well, one of my because I'm single, and so what my question is that, so I have it in place of who takes care of everything.
Okay.
But if I'm in an accident or something, how would that person, where would I give that information, or how would that person, the police officer, like a car accident?
Right.
Who would he know who to call?
Right. Well, hopefully, the first responders or the emergency room or the hospital would reach out and find them some way, somehow, and then they can come to the hospital prepared with all the documents and everything that they need. Yeah.
So would it be best to have someone that lives in the same state as you, or?
That's your ideal situation, but that's not always possible. I totally realize that. I have a friend who, she and her family were ATVing in another state, and they had an accident, and her son ended up at the hospital, and they needed to have documents, and they had her son ended up passing away from the accident, and she had to have documents in order to get him back to Colorado. And stuff. So she had everything online where she could access it and other people could access it as well. And I thought that was an amazingly smart idea, because you never know where you are. I mean, you could be anywhere in the world. And stuff. Yeah.
One thing I feel like I need to throw out a disclaimer real quick to let everybody know this is not legal advice.
Right.
This is just things that Rhonda's been through herself. And so it's things that you need to really be aware of. It's great information, but just a disclaimer, we're not lawyers. Because I know I don't think Rhonda is either. So
No. I spent 4 hours on the phone with an attorney just helping me fill out paperwork. She's like, you don't need to hire an attorney to go file this with the court. She goes, just go do it yourself. And I'm like, I can do it. And she's like, anybody can do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think there is there's some free legal services that you can get. And I know the biggest idea is just knowing what forms need to be filled out and how to fill them out.
Exactly. And, that attorney or law firm or that person can be in your contact list as number one person to contact in an emergency, listed as your emergency contact in your address list. And then they would know where to find all the paperwork that they need. Yeah. But that's a great question, Cindy, because make sure it's someone you trust. Make sure it's somebody you've had the conversation with, and then you back it up with paperwork.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it would be my kids. They're 26, but both of them are in different states.
Right. And you would actually have to choose one of them who would be the primary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great question, Cindy. Anybody else have any questions? So I know I'm just going to talk about this too. I love how you're talking about the 5 different stages, and the one of them being your new health habit, and then the actual health insurance really about filling in the gap.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important. And I know, like, I'm just going to bring a little bit of my own situation because I know it's probably very similar. I know you do Shaklee, which is a whole vitamin line and things like that, right? And so you and your husband were already on those. And
yes.
Same thing with me. My go-to is a different company, of course, but same thing. We had, it's so important to have some kind of daily supplements.
Regimen.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So find something that works for you and really think about your health as a whole. Like, I love how you're saying your mental health as well, because I think all of that plays in together. You know what I mean? So some kind of working out, some kind of, even if it's just walking, that's
exactly
something to get you there. And I want to let people, like, some people will say, oh, well, I can't afford it. Well, you can do exercise for free. So there's that. Pretty much water you can get almost anywhere for free. So you can always drink more water. And then as far as the supplements go, find something that's a blend if you can't afford to do a whole regimen, right? But I will tell you, it makes a huge difference. So regardless of what brand you get, because we know that there's thousands of vitamins out there, I would suggest going through a private company, like checking with Rhonda, or calling me, or one of your other distributors that you know of that has stuff. I wouldn't recommend buying, Walmart vitamins,
right.
Or King Supers, or over the counter, and anything like that. But I feel like it made a huge difference, because in Allie's recovery, I know that she had a better recovery because, one, she was already healthy and taking supplements, and 2, as soon as we figured out what the problem was, because when she got sick at first, we didn't even know what it was. We didn't know if it was the flu. We didn't know, what it was. So this whole acute flaccid myelitis thing caught us out of nowhere. And even the neurologist can't figure out how she healed so well.
That's interesting that you say that, Jennifer, because Steve's ENT doc and neurosurgeon are like amazed at his recovery.
Yeah, it's the natural supplements that help with that. So yeah, the neurologist was like, well, I don't even know, and it's really unfortunate, because there was another kid that did not recover as well. And I last I knew, when we were in the hospital, he was actually paralyzed. Same age as her, same situation, same scenario, same, like, they presented the same, but he was paralyzed and she's fine. And I really think there's a lot to the natural supplements. We did like Greek yogurt and coconut oil and greens and, things that are really accessible nowadays to everybody.
Yeah, we ended up with a similar situation. One of those ladies who was in the neuro ICU waiting room with me, her name is Rhonda as well, and we're still in touch. Her 22-year-old son had a traumatic brain injury because he fell off of a roof.
Oh, geez. And
that was like 5 years ago. And it was 3 years later when he ended up with bacterial meningitis. Her son was in the neuro ICU at the same time Steve was. He's now 22. He's got half of his body paralyzed. He's legally blind. He will not drive, for the rest of his life. And he will be living at home for the rest of his life. And he's 22. And so Steve and I really look at what we were doing.
Yeah, it's the preventative.
It is the preventive and the proactive approach to your health. Because they, even to this day, don't do any of that, which you would think that they would see.
You think it would kind of prompt them. Right.
Yeah. And the stress of the whole situation, and they're living, eating, and breathing it every day because he's living with them.
Right.
So it's interesting that you say that, because he also ended up with a couple of strokes and a seizure, and his health went down fast, and he
Right.
never really has recovered it. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, does anybody else have any more questions? We're getting really close to an hour mark. So if there's no questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And then everybody that was here or registered, because I know there was a couple people that registered, but then they messaged me this morning saying, I can't be there because something happened. And don't worry, we'll send out the replay. So we'll do that and get this out to you guys. I don't see anybody in chat saying they have more questions. So for that, Rhonda, thank you so much. I'm super excited. Like, I have my own list here of everything. And I'm going to get some paperwork together for sure. So I really, really appreciate it. Don't forget, she gave this juicy offer, you guys, to have a free call with her.
Yeah.
So I will email that information out as well so that you guys can contact her for that. And thank you. Do you have anything else to add or end with?
No, I just want to wish, everybody a very healthy and blessed day, and, take one little step and improve your situation, improve your health.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much for being here. I appreciate you for coming on as my guest, and I just appreciate everything you taught us today.
I appreciate it as well. Thank you for the opportunity, Jennifer.
Thanks. You guys all have a great day, and we'll see everybody soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.